Hi, everybody. Welcome to this New Generation Thinkers webinar. We're just going to wait for a minute or two. I can see there's still lots of people joining. We're just going to wait for a minute or two to give everybody a chance to log on. Just while we are waiting for people to join, I just wanted to let everybody know, if you do have any questions at any point throughout this webinar, please do ask them using the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. Really helps us just keep track of what questions have been asked and answered. If you post a question in the chat box, we may not notice it. So yeah, please do use the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen to ask questions. So I can see there's still a few people joining. We're just going to wait for another 30 seconds or so just to see if the numbers stabilize. So I think we're pretty much there now. Everybody seems to be joining. So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today for this New Generation Thinkers webinar. Once more, if you have any questions at any point during this session, please ask them using the Q&A button, the Zoom Q&A feature just at the bottom of the screen. So yeah, I think we'll kick things off now. If we can just move on to the next slide. So yeah, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming today. Really pleased with the number of people who are joining us today. This webinar is about the AHRC BBC New Generation Thinkers Scheme for 2024. Thank you for anyone who submitted questions in advance. We'll hopefully answer the majority of questions you might have during our presentation. If you have questions at any point, please ask those using the Zoom Q&A feature, which I realize I've mentioned 3 times now. We'll hopefully get to as many of them as we can today. So you probably know who we are. We are the Arts and Humanities Research Council. We're part of a larger government body called UK Research and Innovation. We are the largest funder of arts and humanities research in the UK. So my name is Tom Forrest. I work in the public engagement team at AHRC. I'm the overall manager of the New Generation Thinkers Scheme. I'm very fortunate to be joined by 2 of my colleagues today, including Louise from our grant operations team, who looks after the application process and the mechanics of how people actually apply for the scheme, and also my invisible colleague Bethany, who's helping us run the presentation and will be helping us manage the questions later on today. So just in terms of what we're going to cover today, I'm going to talk for a bit about what the New Generation Thinkers Scheme is all about overall. Louise is then going to talk a bit about what we're looking for when you apply and the kind of mechanics of the application process. Louise is also just going to talk about how our new funding service works and what it's like when you actually use the application form online. And then finally, we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers at the end of the session. So I'm going to talk a bit about the scheme. So the New Generation Thinkers Scheme is one of the most prestigious opportunities for early career researchers in the country, and it is one of the AHRC's flagship public engagement programs. I'm very pleased to say that the scheme and our partnership with the BBC is now well over 10 years old. I think we're coming up on 13, 14 years of this partnership now. The BBC, I'm sure you've probably heard of, but the BBC is the UK's public service broadcaster, and it's one of the largest, oldest and most prominent broadcasting organisations in the world. The New Generation Thinkers Scheme every year gives 60 applicants the chance to workshop programme ideas with experienced BBC producers. And of those 60, 10 are selected every year to become an AHRC BBC New Generation Thinker. And the scheme really is all about getting your research ideas onto BBC platforms. Just before I move on, I just thought I would mention that you might hear us use the expression NGT at various points today. and elsewhere around the scheme. This just means new generation thinkers. It's just a shorthand we use because it's a bit of a mouthful otherwise. So, as I say, new generation thinkers have a unique opportunity to make programmes for BBC Radio 3 and other outlets, as well as contributing to wider media through the AHRC. The BBC has a huge amount of experience bringing complex ideas to the largest possible audience. And as I say, the scheme is all about getting your research in front of those producers and working with them to turn it into programmes and content for BBC platforms. Scheme provides, in addition to that, the scheme provides exceptional training, including from BBC producers, and also includes expert training in things like media engagement and building your profile on social media. Scheme also includes further opportunities every year to access dedicated funding to participate in various festivals. Some examples of some of our partners that we've worked with in the past here, as well as other events. The scheme also includes a professional photo shoot. So all the pictures you've seen today, these are pictures of our 2023 New Generation Thinkers from their photo shoot earlier this year. So just put some testimonials and examples of some of the stuff that our past New Generation Thinkers have done here. Becoming a New Generation Thinker really can transform your career. The training and mentoring opportunities, which are completely free and provided right from the start of the scheme, are some of the most valuable early career research and development opportunities available in the UK. Past New Generation Thinkers have gone on to become TV presenters, have landed book deals, regularly appear in the media, and have become real ambassadors for their discipline, all while also being some of the AHRC's top arts and humanities researchers. For one example I put down here, you can see Shahida Bari was an NGT back in 2011. Just 2 years ago, she appeared at the Hay Festival on a panel with Stephen Fry. It can potentially be a real rocket ship for your career. This is an extremely quick overview of the scheme, but there's lots more information on our website. If you go to the AHRC website and look under the People and Skills section, there's lots more information. There's also lots of information linked to from the funding finder page for New Generation Thinkers to past BBC programmes made by New Generation Thinkers, which are well worth looking at. So that's a really, really quick overview of the scheme. I'm going to pass over to Louise now, who's just going to talk a bit about some advice for applying to the scheme.
Thanks, Tom. Hi, everybody. Yeah, I'm just going to give you a bit of advice and do's and don'ts and some common issues we see with applications. So do check your eligibility. I know it seems obvious, but it's really important. Don't waste your time and effort if you're not eligible. The eligibility guidance is clearly set out on our website in the Who Can Apply section, but I want to highlight a few things that sometimes catch people out. So first one is you must be working or studying at an eligible organisation to apply. If you're not sure if your organisation is eligible, then do seek the further information on our website. It's all outlined on the funding opportunity, or get in contact with us if it doesn't quite answer your question on there. Personal eligibility, there's 3 personal eligibility criteria listed on the funding opportunity. You don't have to fulfill all 3. You just need to fulfill one and then explain which one you fulfill within your application. One of the criteria is about if you're studying a PhD at the moment, and in that criteria we say about you need to be a considerable progress in your PhD. So when we say that, it means that if you're studying a PhD, it needs to be past the halfway mark of your PhD in order to have built up enough research to speak about. So please do bear that in mind. If you're at the very beginning of your journey on your PhD, it's not quite the time for you yet. So we've tried to ensure that our guidance is as broad and as clear as possible. Do please read all of the guidance carefully, and also approach your research office for help, because they'll have loads of experience with UKRI eligibility criteria, And they can often confirm things for you easily and probably quicker than we can get back to you sometimes. But where that doesn't work, we're very happy to be contacted to look at individual circumstances. We'll put the details up at the end of how you can contact us for that. Okay, second point, do your research. So before you start your application, we've got loads of information, again, on the funding opportunity on the UKRI website. So do take a look at that. We've also got some dedicated NGT resources under the people and skills section of our website. It's got loads of content on there. It's got interviews with previous new generation thinkers, advice on applying. It's got links to listen to the work of previous new generation thinkers as well. And it will just give you a sense of how other academics have expressed their research on the radio, and specifically in a style suited for a Radio 3 audience. So do take a look at that before you apply. But do remember, when you're doing your research, don't forget to make yours different. We're very much looking for a diversity of voices with interesting things to say. So, think about what makes your research stand out. Okay, on to the next point. So do make sure the arts and humanities are at the heart of your proposal. For some people, this is really easy, but it's worth stressing that our guidance states your research must have a primary focus in the arts and humanities. So your research could be bringing together arts and humanities research with other non-funded disciplines, provided you can demonstrate suitable links to the world of arts and humanities, and that the arts and humanities remains a primary focus, that'll be fine. But if your discipline is not a typical arts and humanities remit one, please make sure you consider what the arts and humanities elements are in your application before applying. Again, you can reach out to us if you have any queries on that. Don't forget your audience with that as well. So your target audience for your whole application is the general public. So you're not writing this to other academics within your area. Really consider the language that you're using, the amount of jargon, acronyms, and other specialist terms that you include. Those are stuff in your applications as well. They're not going to be experts in the field. So while they'll be completely appropriate to assess your application, they won't have that niche expertise. So again, just making that language accessible and keeping that general public audience in mind. I think I've skipped ahead a couple, so sorry, going back to the left-hand side of the presentation. Do say something interesting in your review. So what we mean by this is what we're looking for here is more than just a summary of a piece of culture. We want to see that you say something interesting about something that's not your bread and butter academic work. So think critically about the experience and offer a point of view. Also, kind of like parallel to that, I'm hopping about all over the place here, but on the right hand side of the presentation, that point there about don't shoehorn. So we tend to get a lot of applications that draw on the contemporary context. An example is that in the past we've received applications related to Brexit or COVID-19, and there's nothing wrong with linking your research ideas to things that are currently going on in the world. It's a really great way to engage with the general audience. But don't shoehorn it. It can't be too big of a leap, only draw a parallel where there is a genuine link. And finally, do read the core guidance. Again, it's a really obvious one, but you'd be amazed by sort of how many things can be overlooked when you're skimming through. And we do really have a comprehensive set of guidance on the website, on the funding opportunity. Everything I've highlighted to you today is in there in more detail. So really make sure you give it a good read before starting to think about your application. And you'll see a timeline in there for applications as well, which we'll put up now. If I can get you to change the slide, please, Bethany. Fabulous. So here we go. So we've got the timeline for applying here. The key date is 3rd of October 2023. At 4 p.m. UK time. That is the closing date for applications. We will then be holding a joint assessment panel with the BBC in December of this year. And then 11th to the 15th of December, applicants will be informed of decisions. That will be 2023, not 2022. We won't go back a year to inform you of that. Apologies for that error there. January 2023 is when we'll select BBC, when BBC applicant workshops will be held for the final 60. And then January to February 2024, the final 10 new generation thinkers will be advised. And then if I can just go on to the next one. Lovely. Again, that timeline that I just talked about, that's on the website, on the funding opportunities, so that's all there in the core guidance information for you. Right, I'm going to talk a little bit about the UKRI funding service now. So this year, same as last year, we're running this funding opportunity on our new UKRI funding service. So you, just to be really clear, you cannot apply for it through the joint electronic submission system, which we use for some of our other funding opportunities. It'll be through the new UKRI funding service. To apply, you will need to sign in or create a UKRI funding service account. To create an account, you select your organisation, verify your email address, set up a password. If your organisation isn't listed, there's a support address that you can email, so that's listed here. This information, again, is all on the funding opportunity guidance on the funding finder. So you don't need to remember this or write this down. That's all listed on there for you. What I will say with this is make sure you're signed up nice and early if you're thinking of applying. Because again, if your organisation isn't listed on there, you'll want to contact that support service as soon as possible, get yourself set up with plenty of time to be able to work on your application. Can I get the next slide, please? Okay, so once you've set up your account on the UKRI funding service, you'll then be able to apply. So I'm going to talk you through a little bit of the key how to apply points. Again, though, there's a lot more detail on this on the funding opportunity. But these are some key points that I wanted to go through today. So the applicant, you are responsible for completing the application process on the UKRI funding service. There is a step-by-step process on how you go about doing that, and how you submit your application can be found on the opportunity page. This is the link here to the opportunity page. This is the thing I've been banging on about for the last couple of slides. And it's under the how to apply section is where you'll find all the step-by-step guidance, specific section guidance as well for like each box that you need to fill out as part of your application form too. You can save your answers as you go along and come back to them, or you can work offline and return to copy and paste your answers into it. If you wanted to do that, if you prefer to kind of work offline, all the questions and assessment criteria are listed on the how to apply section, so you can copy and paste that into a Word document and do your application that way. But you can save your answers in the system. So if you want to just put it directly into the text box in the system, you'll be able to save your progress and come back to it. Once you've completed your application, this is really, really important actually. Once you've completed your application, you'll basically get a point where you can then move the application on within the funding service, and it will then send it to your research office for review. Your research office will then check it. If there's anything that needs editing, they'll return it to you, so you've got the opportunity to edit it before they submit it. And once they're happy with it, it's your research office that will submit it to UKRI for assessment. So it's really important to note this, because only the research office can do this. So you really need to allow sufficient time for your research office's internal SLA. So it's worth getting in contact with them early and going, thinking of applying, when do you need me to submit this to you by? Because there'll be nothing worse than you've spent so much time in this application and find that you're going to be really crunching it towards the deadline because of your research office's internal SLA. So make sure that you get to them in good time. We've also got a couple, so there's a link at the very bottom of this slide here. There's some research office webinars about the new UKRI funding service, which might be useful. So feel free to check those out if that would be helpful for you. Next slide, please. Cool. And then finally, this is the UKRI Funding Service Help Desk information. So if you're having any troubles with your application through the service, the UKRI Funding Service Help Desk is there to help with any questions, and also to help with the opportunity itself. So all queries should be directed through the following routes. That email address there, support@fundingservice.ukri.org, or via telephone. You see that telephone number there. You can call that anytime between 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. Any queries relating to opportunity hosted on GES should be directed through their current help desk. Right, ignore that bit because we're not hosting this opportunity through GES. But if you happen to be doing another application for a different scheme, you have to find out the communication routes via that, via whichever service you're using. I think that's everything. Is the next slide just a thank you? Oh, I also wanted to say actually really quickly, before we go into that thank you, is that in terms of our guidance and support being accessible, we do on our web pages, there's all the information of the guidance can be made available in accessible formats. So if you do need that, then head on over to our website and you can request it in more accessible formats if you need. That's everything from me. I'll hand back over to you, Tom.
Thank you, Louise. That was great. I can see we had a couple of questions of people asking if the webinar would be made available after the session, and the answer is yes. We are going to this is currently being recorded, and we're going to place this recording along with all the links that Louise was just referring to up on our YouTube channel, and then repost that to social media after the event. So if you would like to do this again or look at the slides again, that will be available. So thank you for that, Louise. We are now going to go into the Q&A bit of this session, and my invisible colleague Bethany is going to be picking and reading questions to ask Louise and I. It may be that we're going to try and get through as many questions as we can. We may choose not to answer questions that are like super specific. So it's often the case that applicants might have some extremely unique application criteria which they need to ask questions about. We may choose not to answer those today because they might not be relevant to most of our applicants. However, if you do email us to the email address that Louise just mentioned, which we'll post in the chat in a minute, we will be happy to reply with an answer over email for those extremely specific questions. So yeah, if we don't get to your question, that's probably why. Bethany, I feel like I'm on a game show. Do you have a question for us?
I have many. Thanks everyone for sending these in. A very simple question for Louise to kick us off, for people that might not have ever submitted something through TFS or GES previously. What do you mean by research office? You're on mute.
You know what? You would have thought I would have learned to unmute myself by now. So yeah, so research office. So your organisation will have an internal department that deals with any research applications or research activity. So that's what I mean by research office. It might be called something different in your organisation, particularly if you're a smaller organisation. It might just be one person that is involved in helping with research applications, but there will be a dedicated department or person within your organisation that will be the person that will be submitting applications on your organisation's behalf. So get in contact with your department heads or with your organisation to find out who the go-to person is.
The one thing I might add to that is if you work for an independent research organisation that's not a university, so there are a number of organisations which are accredited independent research organisations, they may not have a research office, in which case if you apply from there, your application will come to us directly. So for example, the National Trust is an independent research organisation, and if you're applying as a researcher based there, your application would be submitted direct to us because they don't have a research office. But if you work at a university and you're applying from a university, you almost certainly do have a research office.
Thanks both. We've had a few questions come in around remit. Is there a place where people can find on our website what we sort of define as arts and humanities disciplines and what subjects fall within that remit? And could you speak a little bit more around what you mean by arts and humanities being at the heart of someone's research and that application? So if they're coming from a subject that might at face value not seem very arts and humanities-ish, how can they bring that through or make sure that it's appropriate and eligible for this scheme?
So I'll take this one. So that's a great question. We do have a list of all our topic areas on our website. If you go to the New Generation Thinkers funding opportunity page, has a list of the top level AHRC topic areas on it, but it also contains a link through to the AHRC Research Funding Guide, which is a 100-page document that sets out basically everything that you need to know about applying for research funding at the AHRC. Within that, there is a list of every single topic area that the AHRC funds. It's worth mentioning that there are some kind of grey areas. So, for example, economics is covered by our sister research council, the ESRC, Economics and Social Research Council. And there's a few grey areas about what's considered arts and humanities research and what's not. It's usually the kind of degree to which it's approached as a science rather than a humanity. If you have any doubts about that, I would encourage you to email us about it. Your second question, which was about the degree to which your application needs to be arts and humanities, what we specify in the core guidance is that it needs to be at least 50% based in the arts and humanities. We do encourage interdisciplinary applications, but they do need to be rooted in the arts and humanities. The example I always give is a few years ago, one of our New Generation Thinkers, Majed Akhtar, he's actually a civil engineer, but his application was all about dams, but it was about how dams affected cultures in the countries that built them. So there was it was extremely relevant to arts and humanities research, even though his interest had originated in civil engineering, not an arts and humanities topic. So that's an example of how he was able to bring that focus back to the arts and humanities and demonstrate that in his application.
Thank you, that's really helpful. Although we did say we're not going to get into super nitty-gritty questions, we have had, we've had quite a few on a similar theme, so I think it's probably worth us picking up. For people who are perhaps ECRs who are in fixed-term contracts, or they're perhaps independent researchers, what's the sort of eligibility around that?
Around being an independent researcher?
Yes, or if, say, you're currently in a fixed term employment, but you suspect by the time, if you were to be selected, your contract might have ended and you don't know where you will necessarily be.
So the really important thing to know about this is that we check your, you need to be either working or studying at a UK eligible, as a research organisation that is eligible to receive funding from UKRI to apply. But we check that eligibility only at the moment that you submit your application. So if you are currently studying at a university, but you think you might not be in 2 months' time, if you apply before that term of employment ends, that's fine, because we only check at that moment when you apply. It is not necessary for you to retain the same employment contract or retain the exact same position throughout the duration of the scheme. It is only about that moment when you submit your application that is relevant. And we absolutely do appreciate that people change jobs, and employment situations can be flexible and complicated. So that is why our eligibility checks are done in this way. Louise, I don't know if there's anything that you want to add to that.
No, nothing further. Nothing further to add there. Again, just to point out that if you want to read a bit more about organisational eligibility and personal eligibility, that you can find it in the Who Can Apply section on the funding opportunity. So it goes into, breaks down exactly kind of what Tom just said there.
Thanks both. We've had a few questions around if you've applied in previous years, is it okay to apply again? Similarly, if you've got through to say the workshop stage, but you don't get selected for the final 10, what happens then? Can you reapply? Are you allowed to pitch your ideas outside of the BBC as well? There's quite a few questions in that.
Okay, so if you've applied for the scheme before, there's nothing that says you can't apply again, as long as you weren't actually selected as a New Generation Thinker. However, you do still need to meet the eligibility criteria. So eventually enough time will pass that you are no longer eligible because you'll no longer be an early career researcher. So if you're still eligible for the scheme, that's not a problem, you can still apply. If you've got through to the workshop stage in a previous round, what was the question? If you get through this time, or if you've got through before, Bethany?
Sorry, 1 second. I'd minimize the question. So if you get through to the workshop phase, but not the final 10, what happens to you? Can you apply again the next year, or do you have to apply again the next year? Are you able to pitch your ideas outside or beyond the BBC?
Right, okay. So if you get through to the workshop stage, it's worth saying that the workshop is a valuable and worthwhile thing doing of itself. It's a whole day of intensive work with BBC producers and training with BBC producers. You get to meet other people who've applied for the scheme. It's a really fantastic experience. So getting along to the workshop stage is well worth doing just in of itself. It's also often the case that the BBC will choose people from the workshops to appear on BBC programmes, even if they're not selected as a final new generation thinker. This happens every single year, that the BBC will decide to make a programme about something, and they'll just think, oh, we met that person at that workshop, let's get them on our programme. That routinely happens. So if you do go on to the workshop but don't get selected, that's still a very worthwhile thing to do. If you do go to the workshop, don't get selected, you can absolutely apply again the following year. We normally encourage people to think about applying with a different angle on their research, or thinking about how things that they've learned over the last year, rather than simply resubmitting the same application. Because if it wasn't competitive in a previous round, it might not be competitive in the next round, if that makes sense. But again, if you're still eligible to the scheme, there's no reason that you can't reapply to the scheme unless you are selected and become a New Generation Thinker. I think that covered the whole question.
Thank you. We've had lots of questions about the application process and the application form, so I think it's probably worth us covering those. One question which I loved, which is, what are some of the common mistakes that you've seen which we should avoid, which is great. And other side of the coin, what would a really successful application look like? We've had a few people ask if we've got any example applications available. I don't think we do, but if you could speak a little bit more around that, Tom.
So, wow, there's quite a few bits to that question. So to answer your last question first, we don't have an example application that you can view. The reason for that is that there is no one right way to apply for this scheme. I don't think we want to try and condition applicants to apply in any particular way. Different research will, you're asked to propose a different programme for Radio 3. Different research and different angles in that research will lead to very, very different programmes, and successful applicants do not all look the same. So for that reason, we have chosen not to put any example applications out for that reason. I can't remember all the questions. You asked me about 4 different things at once there. Sorry.
So common mistakes that come up with applications, and I think it's probably been touched upon in the presentation, but sort of strengths of an application. What's going to make a really strong application? What's going to be I was going to say problematic, but I don't mean that. What sort of errors or common mistakes are people typically making?
I'll ask Louise to come in on this in a second, but I was just going to say a really strong application is a combination of really excellent, interesting, exciting new research with a really interesting take or way in for the audience into that research. So a clever, interesting route into that. And that application will also demonstrate command of quite a broad range of knowledge and confidence exploring that knowledge as expressed, for example, through the review and your academic background. So that's my view of what a really strong application is. Common mistakes in an application, I think Louise kind of covered it earlier really, but missing things about your eligibility. So we get a very small number of applications, fortunately every year, but a very small number of people who haven't worked out their eligibility correctly, and unfortunately we're not able to take forward. And I think the main thing I will never really against is writing as if it's for an academic audience. I think that there's definitely a kind of reflexive tendency to write the same way you'd write an academic paper, and that is not going to work on this scheme. Your application will be read by some very clever, very well-educated people, but they will not necessarily be academics, and we will be thinking about your application in terms of how you can communicate your research in an accessible way for a general audience. So if you apply using lots of kind of, lots of I can't remember what the word is off the top of my head, lots of language that's specific to your area. Jargon, thank you. I couldn't remember the word jargon, that's terrible. If you apply using lots of jargon or footnotes and things like that, that will hold your application back. Louise, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
Yeah, I think it's just thinking about on the presentation, that sort of do's and don'ts slide, is we popped that on there because it was common kind of things that people were catching people out that we've seen from previous rounds. And yeah, like Tom said, it's just like really make sure that you fit the eligibility criteria. Much prefer you, if you can't get the information from the all the funding guidance that's available online, we'd much prefer you email us beforehand than waste all your time and effort putting together an application just for us to go, doesn't meet the criteria. So if you're at all unsure, once you've read through all that guidance, do just drop us a line, because we'd much prefer to let you know now rather than you waste your time and effort. So yeah, just read the guidance, and also just, yeah, the things sort of I mentioned about, I suppose making sure you're not sort of shoehorning your application, trying to sort of, again, it's really great to engage general audience with current things that are going on in the world, but only if it's really relevant, or if there's a real genuine link with your research. Don't just try and shoehorn things in, because I think sometimes that does hinder, I'd say. Well, I don't think those applications do as well if the link's not there. Yeah, the jargon thing, agree with that. And yeah, just really making sure your research does have that primary focus of arts and humanities research. I thought that example was really great, Tom, the one that you mentioned about a previous new generation thinker. I think that's just such a good example of like, you can maybe have a discipline in something completely outside of arts and humanities, but your research is corely focused in the arts and humanities, and that's great. That's what we want, as opposed to maybe being, say, an astrophysicist, and you might really enjoy dance, but if the research isn't about dance, you just enjoy it, it's not the same thing. I hope that makes sense.
Thank you, Louise. I've just posted the email address in the chat as well. So if you have any questions that if you have questions you want to ask us today, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen. But at any other time, please do email us at the email address, and we will be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you both. We've had a few questions around the review component of the application. So could you speak a little bit more about this? How different does it need to be from the applicant's research area? What sort of things can people be reviewing?
Okay, so The first thing to say, first of all, is that the review is one of the most important parts of your application. Probably after your program pitch, it is one of the most important parts. I mean, your research history is obviously also very important, but the review is a very important part of your application. Your review is really an opportunity to demonstrate your ability to engage with ideas outside of your own topic area. If you were to talk about something that's actually quite close to your topic area, you'd be kind of missing the opportunity to show us that you're able to talk about something else, and as a result, that would make your application a little bit weaker. So I would encourage you to think outside the box when you do your review. As for what your review can be about, I think the guidance says that it can be any cultural event or artifact, so any film, play, book, experience, even something like going on to an exhibition, an art gallery that you had recent experience of. So that there's an entire world of stuff that your review could potentially be about. In truth, the most important thing with the review is not to simply tell us how good the thing is that you went to see, but rather to explore ideas prompted by or within that work or experience, because we're really looking for the ideas within it. So in that sense, the actual thing that you're reviewing is a bit less important than what it is that you're able to find in that and tell us about and explore. So pretty much anything can be the topic of your review. Often we often get reviews that are of pop culture things. So I think we went through a space of getting quite a few reviews of the Avengers a couple of years back. I'm expecting to receive a fair few about the Barbie movie or this year, just because that's having a cultural moment. That's fine if you can find something interesting and unique that only you're able to tell us within it. At the same time, we've also had reviews of an exhibition about trees. I remember reading last year, which was absolutely fascinating. So there is no right or wrong answer to what you review, but it's what you find in that review is very important. I hope that answers the question a bit.
Yes, thank you. Just sticking with the application before we move on to some other areas that people have raised. 2 questions. So would you suggest that people develop a proposal in an area of research that they are really enmeshed in, they've worked on it extensively, or can people propose new ideas? So that's part A of the question. Part B, from someone else, sorry, is more around kind of editorial guidelines. So proposing ideas that might be considered thorny or challenging or difficult, perhaps very political. Could you talk a little bit more around that?
Yes, I love that you're asking these as questions of the part A and part B rather than just as 2 different questions.
I'm just trying to squeeze as many in as possible. We've had loads of great questions, so I'm trying to squeeze as many in.
Okay, so the first question was about. Sorry, Bethany. Can you say the first question again?
So, can someone submit a proposal for research that what would be the preference? Someone submitting a proposal for research that they're fully kind of embedded in, they've done a lot of work on, or it's a really new area for them?
So we have successful applicants who do both of these things, not at the same time, but we have applicants who talk about their research that they are very deeply in, and we have applicants who apply with a bit of research that is actually a bit outside what they normally write about. The important thing is demonstrating that you are credible to talk about that thing, and that you are able to talk and that you're able to present something that is, high quality, interesting research. I think most of the academics that we've met will, everybody has their focus area, but are also interested in a wide variety of other things. If you can talk about one of those other things strongly, then that is absolutely fine. But there's no right or wrong answer to this one. I think the second question was about whether there's things that topics that we're not allowed to talk about or something.
Yeah, so thinking about kind of editorial guidelines, and perhaps this is more linked to sort of BBC editorial guidelines. So if someone's coming in with, and their research is very political, is that likely to be vetoed? What are the kind of limitations around that, I guess?
So that's a really interesting question. I strongly encourage you to apply. There is, as far as we are concerned, there are, all of human experience is up for grabs, and that there is nothing that is, there are no topics that we don't want to explore. The BBC, however, does have editorial guidelines about how they present ideas on the radio, but it's not usually the case that they won't put an idea on the radio. It's just that they'll try and present it in a kind of more balanced way, or they want to represent multiple sides of the same story, so that they feel like they're not presenting a program that is extremely politically biased or something like that. The BBC will work with you to put together a program that they're able to air. However, I think you should definitely apply. We'd be however controversial your research is, or however controversial the topic that you're looking into is. We have applications, successful applications every single year that cover controversial and difficult topics, including everything from anti-Semitism to political critiques, and I could think of a dozen examples.
Thank you. That's really helpful. I was wondering if you could share a bit more information around the workshop. So we've got 3 dates for the workshops listed on the website. Do people need to be available for all 3 of those? What can they expect if they turn up for a workshop? What's involved in the day?
So if you are successful in being invited to the workshop, you'll be offered a choice of those 3 dates. So you just need to be available for one of those dates. And we'll work with you to try and get the one that is closest to where you are and is best for your availability. The workshops are normally run, we normally run 2 in London and 1 in Salford, in Manchester. So yeah, as I say, we'll try and work with you to get you to be able to attend the one that's most convenient for you. The workshops themselves are a combination of training from the BBC, sitting down and workshopping your idea with BBC producers and with your peers. You'll have a bit during the afternoon where you'll actually pitch your idea to a panel of BBC producers, and then they and your peers will ask you questions about it. And there's a number of exercises and other sort of workshop sessions. I don't want to give too much away because I don't know whether the BBC is going to run it necessarily the same way, but a number of kind of exercises and games to kind of help draw out research ideas and give you an opportunity to showcase your interests in other areas of knowledge. It is a really exciting day and well worth attending.
Thank you. I wondered if you could talk a little bit around the nature of being an NGT in terms of financial commitments, time commitments. So is there funded affiliated with being an NGT? How much time should people dedicate? So what's the kind of, what's the commitment essentially, and what's on offer?
Okay, so New Generation Thinkers is very much a scheme that the more you're able to put into it, the more you will get out of it. There is no set or fixed expectation of how much time you put in. Hypothetically, you could put no time into it. Even after being selected, you wouldn't get anything out of it. But if life things happen to you, or you're not able to commit as much as you might want to, the scheme is extremely flexible in how in your commitments and how much time you're able to put in. Things like you'll have opportunities to make programs for the BBC and to workshop things for the BBC. You can work with them to about when the right time to do that is. So if you, for example, find that you're extremely busy at one time of the year because of other work commitments that are more open at another time of the year, the BBC and us can work with you around that so that most of your contribution happens during that time. So there is no fixed amount of time that we expect you to put into the scheme. It's the more you put in, the more you get out of it. In terms of funding for the scheme, there is no direct funding, so you don't get paid to be an NGT. However, any contributions you make whatsoever to BBC platforms you will be compensated at standard BBC rates. So whether it's appearing on the radio or writing for the website, whatever the case may be, you'll be paid for at a standard BBC rate for that work. We will cover all expenses if you are selected as an NGT for participating in things like festivals or going along to training events or whatever the case may be. We do also make some direct funding available for example, participation in the Being Human Festival. We have a ring-fenced pot of funding available specifically to New Generation Thinkers for participating in that festival. So there is some direct funding associated with that. However, there is not like a set stipend that you get automatically just by becoming a New Generation Thinker. Hope that clears things up.
Thank you. That's really appreciated. We've had a few questions, and I guess this does fall under eligibility remit, but I think it'd be helpful to just reassure people listening in. When we talk about New Gen Thinkers, is there an age limit?
Yeah, got so long as you're older than 18. Yeah, over the age of 18. So no one below 18 can apply, unfortunately. So if you're a child genius who is doing your PhD now, but you're under 18, unfortunately, you can't apply.
I believe that is a limit of how BBC contracts and things work. There is no upper age limit on becoming a New Generation Thinker. It's only that you remain eligible as an early career researcher. So if you do come to your academia extremely late, that's absolutely fine. It's just about how far along in your academic career you are.
Well, thank you both. So I'm just scrolling through the questions. This is around the sort of outputs that an NGT will be expected to produce during their year and afterwards. What kind of radio programme or format will the NGT be asked to produce for the BBC? Is it just like one podcast episode or multiple radio programmes, for example?
So that's a really good question. It kind of depends on, so most New Generation Thinkers will appear on at least one panel program through as a kind of base, will appear on at least one panel program through the year, and will usually work on an episode of The Essay for BBC Radio 3. I know that the BBC is always reviewing what kinds of programs they make, so I don't know exactly what programs they may or may not be making next year, but depending on what they are working on, you will find opportunities arise associated with those programs. You also have the opportunity to pitch programs to the BBC. So if you have an idea for a multi-episode series around your research, the BBC will be very interested to hear that and work on that idea with you. This comes back to what I was saying a few minutes ago about the more you put in, the more you get out of the scheme. If you want to take advantage of those opportunities, you may find that you have a lot more programming associated with you than if you didn't. But there is no beyond that kind of one panel program episode of The Essay, there's no fixed amount of stuff that you should expect. It really depends on what opportunities, what things the BBC are already working on, what you are able to pitch to BBC producers.
Thank you. I think we've probably got time for one more question. So we've got a huge amount of questions that were sent through, so it's trying to sort of skim through and find one that's going to be general enough for everyone listening in and helpful enough for everyone.
Just while Bethany is doing that, it's okay. I just as a reminder for everybody, if there are any questions that we aren't able to answer today, please do email us at support@funding-service.ukri.org. We will be very happy to answer your question and email you back after this session.
Okey-dokey. I think I've got a general one. Sorry, we've had a huge amount of very specific eligibility questions, which, as Tom mentioned, if you email us directly, we can help you with those. What kind of other opportunities does the scheme provide within the BBC, and what sort of media placement opportunities have been undertaken by previous NGTs?
So that's a very good question, and it kind of depends on any particular year and what's going on at the BBC at any one time. Previous New Generation thinkers have had opportunities with BBC Arts. Some New Generation thinkers have gone on to make programmes with BBC TV. I should say this normally doesn't happen in the first year on the scheme, but as you become known to the BBC, other opportunities may arise. Part of the training that we offer as part of the New Generation Thinkers scheme is a media engagement course that is all about how you can pitch ideas to media organisations. For example, magazines, newspapers. If you've ever been interested in how you get your research as a feature on The Guardian, for example, we have our media trainers have a lot of experience in doing that, and will provide you with that training. Another part of the course is about social media and running things like podcasts. So there's a lot of very useful training as part of the course to support you in doing that work. You will also often find that becoming a New Generation thinker does tend to open other opportunities. We almost every year, New Generation thinkers are approached, by book publishers to explore whether there's possibility of striking a book deal with you about your research. Those are some of the kind of media opportunities that often happen to New Generation thinkers.
And we also have some AHRT events as well.
Yes.
Being Human Festival.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Do we have time for one more, Bethany, or are we?
Yeah, we've got one more. Accents are a big thing in the world of BBC. How does that impact your selection to suit the BBC Radio 3 listeners?
That's a very interesting question. I think the BBC is. There's multiple things that the HRC and the BBC are looking for. One of which is the quality of your research. One of which is your kind of quality of how you're able to make that accessible, and the quality of your communication. Being able to express yourself clearly and confidently in English is definitely something that the BBC will be thinking about. Having an accent, however, I wouldn't think would be a problem, as long as you're able to make yourself understood clearly. That is something that the BBC will be thinking about when they meet you. And I guess one of the advantages of being able to meet you in person is showing off your communication style and how well you're able to express yourself. But simply having an accent should not be a problem. I think we are probably at the end of the Bethany's gone silent, so I think we've probably got to the end of our time today. It is just about the end of the hour. I would like to thank Bethany and Louise for helping us out in the webinar today, and I'd like to thank everybody who's with us for joining us. Thank you for your time today. If you do have any questions that we weren't able to get to, please do email us. We're very happy to answer those questions. I look forward to reading your applications over the coming months. Thank you.